let's get into it. Is the Pac-12 a power conference, as it says on the graphic right there? What does it mean to be a power conference? I think this is an important distinction, because to answer the question of, do you believe the Pac-12 is a power conference, I think you have to understand what that means. What that means is you play by a different set of rules than everybody else. Everybody else can play by your rules, but the power conferences, the autonomous conferences, are allowed to play by their own rules. And what that essentially means is you're making more money, you're bringing in more ticket sales, you're bringing in more TV viewership. That's really what it comes down to. You have the ability to operate with autonomy inside of these special rules that allows you to make more money, that allows you to compensate athletes in different ways and at different levels than the new G6, if you will. That's essentially what it means. And what it also means is you make more money because more people watch you on TV and more people come to your games. That is the layman's very basic, lowest level definition of what a power conference is. You play by a different set of rules that allows you to make more money. And therein lies the problem for the Pac-12. Now, I understand the Pac-12 fans believe they're already a power conference. The autonomous designation was stripped from the Pac-12, and it is going to be nearly impossible to get that back. I have talked to a lot of people in administration around college athletics, and it is going to be very, very difficult to get autonomous status once more for the Pac-12. Is it impossible? Nothing's impossible. Is it likely? Highly unlikely the Pac-12 will become a power conference again. And the reason that matters is because the Pac-12 will not have access to multiple bids into whatever the college football playoff is going to turn into over the next 2 to 3 years. That's the biggest issue, because again, we know just getting into the college football playoff is a windfall of millions. And if you win games and you win multiple games, we're talking about tens of millions of dollars moving forward. So it is a significant financial ceiling if you are not designated an autonomous conference, which I am told is unlikely to happen for the Pac-12. You look at all of these circumstances, and I don't know what it will take, but it's not going to be a conference built around Boise, Idaho. I think that is the single biggest issue facing the Pac-12 is you don't have large TV markets, so you don't have leverage to make more money through your media rights deal, which will allow you to play bigger games on bigger television networks, if you will, or broadcast platforms, if you will. So you are limiting yourself. And the question is, when you look at the roster that the Pac-12 is putting together, and you say to yourself, hey, this is a West Coast conference, nothing wrong with that. But you don't have Los Angeles. That's a big hole in your West Coast conference, right? Because you lost SC and UCLA. That's why somebody like a St. Mary's becomes a really important add, because it gives you a university in a major market like the Bay Area. That would be ginormous, which is why so many people are talking about St. Mary's joining the Pac-12 at some point down the road. But you begin to look at who is in this conference. It is, in fact, the San Diego States, not a big football school at the moment. It is, in fact, a Fresno State who is financially strapped because of the Cal education system. You look at Gonzaga. Gonzaga is a great partner. There's no question about it. However, they don't play football. So now you come to the news of Washington State today, who we understand, as I have told you, and I know, again, we don't do I Told You So Tuesdays on the show.
Right.
But as I've told you, Washington State, its faculty and staff are trying to find every way not to spend money on athletics. So the news today that Washington State has eliminated the field portion of its track program, which means pole vault, which means anything that's not a running sport, is no longer in place at Washington State. And you are starting to see that Washington State University Athletics is cutting anything it can cut out of its athletic department. That tells you one thing right there. They are not going to spend money. They are not going to leverage every single dollar they can to win at the highest level. So one of your biggest brands in the conference, and there's no question in the Pac-12, Washington State's a really significant brand in that conference. Well, one of your most significant brands now is trying to find ways to spend less money in athletics, not more, which right there, Jake, likely means that the Pac-12 can't even make a case that it is a power conference.
Certainly not. And I think that the Pac-12 is a conference that, I understand that there's, some momentum here and there's some exciting things happening and there are some wins happening, and that's great. That's awesome. But that doesn't mean that we can overshoot or exaggerate or somehow stretch the truth about this conference. And the truth is they're not a power conference. And you don't have the membership, you don't have the finances. In my opinion, you don't even have the pedigree to even be considered a power conference now or into the future. And I think that's the hard part. The old Pac-12 was most certainly a power conference with the brands they had, but that's not the same conference, that it is today. And I just think that Pac-12 fan, Pac-12 supporter, Pac-12 homer is going to tell you, hey, this conference is going to, buy our way back and we're going to get an AQ and we're going to be a power conference again and we're going to do all these awesome things. But the problem is in order to do that, you got to beat the big boys and you have to compete at that level regularly. And most importantly, which this is what I think really pisses people off, is the other four conferences, the other four, power conferences want nothing to do with putting in another piece of the pie, right? They don't want to cut someone else in on their revenues. So to me, I just sit here and I look at it and I say, it's not a bad thing not to be a power conference. Like, it's okay to compete at a lower level and just deal with that. Like, at one point you were a power conference, everything that's happened. So this is your new reality. Be good with it, accept it, learn to thrive with it, because it's not going to change. And I just think that the Pac-12 leadership doesn't ever want to take a step back. Their pride has clearly kept them both in the past and now from making good decisions. And to me, I look at this and I say, bro, it's okay not to be the top dog constantly. It's okay to say, yep, we're going to be the best G5. We're going to operate in a really profitable way. We're going to do it in a way that benefits our student athletes, that benefits our member institutions, and we will go from there. But this notion that I constantly see on X and I see just everywhere in our comment section, oh, they're a P5. You guys hate the Pac-12. They're way better than the Mountain West. I just don't think we can factually say any of that. I think that there's so much opinion and emotion on this because stuff like Washington State cutting out the field portion of their track and field program today, that upsets people. And I get that. But, we got to be careful with saying things like, oh, these guys are definitely going to climb back into the power conference equation, because I just don't think that's true at this time.
Yeah, I think it's a really important conversation, though, because the Pac-12 clearly has captured the imaginations of its members and fan bases, right? Which is a big part. If your fans were unenthusiastic about joining the Pac-12, okay, you would have a bigger issue. But my point is, if you are not, this can't be the finish line. If you're the Pac-12, what you've added, and let's assume, because again, I've been told that Texas State is a fait accompli, they're in. If that is in fact the case, that can't be the finish line. I think adding St. Mary's is a really an imperative move for basketball. You've got to make as much basketball money as you can. I think it's huge. Like, you look at, did anybody catch what the AAC did today? Speaking of Memphis, and maybe it wasn't today. Was it yesterday? Yesterday, I heard about it last night. Mike Tranghese, the former Big East commissioner, who some believe is a basketball guru, was added to the AAC as an advisor, a strategic advisor on essentially how to grow their basketball prominence and revenue. Well, why are they doing that? They're trying to keep Memphis. That's why they're doing that. And is Mike Tranghese a big enough name to do that? Maybe. But if you are the Pac-12, you're certainly in a better place than I think a lot of the G5s are. Does that include The AAC, I think it's close. The problem is, this is a very important conversation here. Should Memphis join the Pac-12 as football only? And if they join the Pac-12 as a football only, do they join the Big East for basketball? Because the issue at Memphis is, I don't believe, is their football stability. Their biggest issue at Memphis is their basketball program is far outperforming the rest of that conference, which is pulling down the revenue for Memphis in the AAC. It's this glass ceiling, if you will. It's not really even glass. You can perfectly well see it there. The rest of that conference is pulling Memphis down. And I think hiring Mike Tranghese at the AAC at the conference level is a massive push forward, because you have got to light a fire under the ass of every other school in that conference to start winning basketball games today if you are going to have any chance of keeping Memphis. Because Memphis, I think the other part of this discussion is Memphis pulled $11 million out of the AAC last year. You're not getting anywhere near that in the Pac-12. And it's interesting. We talked about it yesterday on the show. We've been told that the Pac-12 is has had conversations around $65 million a year, which with 8 full members, you do some math, they're looking at $7 million a year, essentially. Now, today, a number of people reached out to me and said, that's not true, Monty. They're not getting, okay, cool. Whatever you look at, let's say it is $65 million. There's a big difference between $11 million and $7 million. And if you are Memphis Football, and if you're Dr. Ed Scott, how much is it going to take to put Memphis Football in the Pac-12? How much is it going to take?
A good bit.
And is that a move that can happen now when the AAC just hired Mike Tranghese today?
I'm just trying to understand why Memphis would consider this. And this is what I said about Boise State and others. You know, I understand that, you know, for the West Coast schools, regionality plays a big piece, and it was just convenient for you that way. But even if you just look at it on like quality of conference, like I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced that the Pac-12, you know, and the makeup of this conference is just somehow, you know, like this great conference with a super bright future. Like I look at it and I say,
the Pac-12.
Yeah.
Well, in football, it's a big step up. I mean, it just on the facts of having a Boise State game every year and an Oregon State game every year, that's a big step up. That is, it is, because you look at
but is it a big enough step up? That like I look at this for Memphis and I
money
say, dude,
talks, bro. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, and I sit here and I say, like, again, anytime money comes up in the Pac-12, my first question is, what are you netting in the Pac-12? Because there are so many question marks about what you're going to have to pay. I like, you just can't reasonably like, oh yeah, it's, you know, we made 11 million in the American, now we're gonna match that in the Pac-12, but you're not, because you're gonna have to pay 3 million here and 2 million there for legal fees and yada yada. Like there's just baggage, and that's what's difficult, and that's where I say, you know, I just don't think it makes a whole lot of sense for Memphis. If you know, if Memphis, and just for conversation's sake, as an example, you know, if it was the Big 12 in Memphis, okay, now we at least have some regionality. You know, now I can say, okay, cool, you're in a power basketball conference that, you know, you're not going to win that conference, but, you know, you're going to play a lot of high profile games. That's clearly going to make your program better, you know, and yeah, you'll be low on the totem pole in football, but, you know, again, you still have opportunity there, and you want to talk about bigger high profile games. The Big 12 can offer you that, but again, that's not an option to them. So that's why I say this whole thing, like, you know, Pete Thamel putting out this story Sunday night talking about how, oh, there's consolidation happening, and, you know, this school leaves there, then what does that conference do? And it's the domino effect. Yeah, but we've been talking about the domino effect for like 10 years, dude. Like, it's not surprising that consolidation is taking place. And that's why I say, if you're a fan of a school that doesn't seem to be taking winning seriously, or doesn't seem to be taking, you know, money and revenue generation and winning games and all of that seriously, you have a problem, because eventually every school is going to be in a realignment conversation.
And I look specifically at Memphis and I say to myself, your problem is basketball. You're playing at FedEx Forum in front of 10, 11,000 fans. The problem is you go on the road and you're playing in a shoebox that's got 5,000 fans in it. You're playing in front of really small crowds on the road because USF doesn't draw a big number. That's a problem, man. You're not making the money because you're not getting the matchup, and you're not getting the matchup because the other schools in your league aren't making the money. And I think it is a really big problem for Memphis that the rest of the AAC doesn't have a gym, doesn't have a fan base in basketball, doesn't make money, doesn't win enough games to lift that conference up. Like, that's a problem. And if you're Memphis, you're so committed to your community, and your community loves. Do you understand? And I don't know how many Memphis fans watch the show, but Memphis basketball is the city of Memphis. The University of Memphis is such an important part of that community. What Penny Hardaway means to that community, what that program, what those kids, what that building on a game night means to Memphis, with the socioeconomic issues going on in that town, that you can be excited about Penny and Memphis basketball, that means something there. And it means nothing when you go on the road and you're playing in front of 4,000 or 5,000 fans in a really small box. That sucks.
Yep.
That sucks. And I think when you start and listen, again, my college basketball team is North Carolina. I'm spoiled, right? My college football team is Notre Dame, but we don't play basketball at Notre Dame. I believe they eliminated the basketball program at Notre Dame. I could be wrong. I just know that we haven't played a physical game in, I think, 10 years. I could be wrong.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm just a red ass.
Notre Dame, our mother.
But growing up a Jordan Worthy fan, Sam Perkins, Big Smooth, right? Like, that's my basketball school. So I'm spoiled. Can you imagine being a Memphis fan trying to play a big game and you're flipping on the TV for a road game and they're at South Florida in front of 4,000 fans? That's not great. And I don't mean to belabor the point, but I understand why Memphis is looking at alternatives. And I think it is a really good alternative, because you can say what you want about the Pac-12. The Pac-12 is going to be a solid football conference. It's going to be top heavy. I don't think there's any doubt. And I have to believe at some point, J.D. Wicker will pull his head out of his ass and actually build a football program.
Don't get too excited now.
Probably not. But I have to think at some point you start looking at what Bronco Mendenhall's got at Utah State, and they're going to come out of this federal investigation lawsuit, Title IX thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're leaving that behind. I have to think that Utah State with Bronco Mendenhall will build a football program. I have to think that Boise's going to keep doing what Boise's doing. I have to think that Oregon State's going to do what they're doing. If you've got 5 teams in a conference the size of the Pac-12 that are legitimate 9, 10, 11 games every year, if you can win that many games with 3, 4 teams, you're one of the better conferences in the country. But is it enough to get Memphis to join as a football only? Because you're probably going to have to pay them significantly more than you're going to pay most of the teams in that conference. Because I don't think $7 million
But
is
how
getting
many
it done.
times are we going to say that?
Well,
Like, how many times are we going to say, they got to pay them more to get them to join? Like,
yeah.
I mean, Gonzaga's getting a full share allegedly. Boise State's going to get more. San Diego State, obviously Oregon State.
But Memphis has legitimate leverage to go to the Pac-12 and say, well, join us at football only. Now, you can only do that if the Big East agrees to take Memphis basketball. And that's a big question. That's a very big question. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and I thought the point was very well made. Does the Big East really need Memphis basketball? And would it take Memphis as a member? I think that's a huge question, because you start looking at the Big East and you say to yourself, well, breaking news, the Big East is a pretty flipping good basketball conference. And you start asking yourself, if I add Memphis to a list that already includes the Johnnies, who were 11th in the country last year and won 18 games in conference, 31 games total, and Creighton and UConn in a down year winning 24 games, Marquette, Xavier, Nova, Georgetown, Butler. Okay, are you better than Seton Hall? Not historically. Right now, certainly you're better than Seton Hall. You're better than DePaul, Providence, Butler, Georgetown, right? But now you start getting into Villanova. Are you better than Villanova at Memphis? I think that's really close.
Depends on the game, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's very interesting. I don't know,
This is what I mean, though. Like, I think that, it's worth the conversation. It's worth looking at. But the Pac-12 is still not a conference where you're like, oh, yeah. Yep.
No doubt about it.
We want to be there. Makes sense. It's an upgrade for us. That's just not the case, man. That is just not where things are at. And again, it's not hating. It's just saying, like, dude, if you want to be a power conference, you're going to have to prove that you can actually win and operate in that way. But the reality is, let's say you did all that. You're still not going to get the power conference designation, if you will, before major change happens in college football. So the main point that I have about this today is, who cares if you're a power conference or not at this point? The only thing that should matter to you is surviving and being around in 3 seasons, because I'm telling you, that's not a guarantee.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just not a guarantee at this point. If you win and you bring in additional revenues, then yes, you have a strong case and you're probably going to be fine. But dude, if let's say Boise State flames out this year for 6 wins or 7 wins, somehow they have some terrible year. Like, that's crushing.
Yeah.
That's crushing, dude.
Yeah, and I think this whole conversation, I don't know, what length of time are you comfortable committing to the Pac-12? Did you sign a 5-year grant of rights? I don't know. You don't know what your media rights are.
Well, you can't tell me these schools are doing 10-year grants of rights. There's no way.
There's not a chance in the world.
No way.
That just is not. That's not possible. I don't think that's. I think it's a 5-year. The bigger question on these grant of rights is, what's it cost to get out? I think that's the single biggest question that people will ask. What's it cost to get out? And I think if you sign a 5-year grant of rights, you better have a way to get out affordably.
Yeah, well,
that doesn't include lawyers.
Did you not learn your lesson from the ACC? Right? I mean, if you're going to sign these deals, yeah, you have to have a way out. And I think that, again, this is my point. Like, if you were negotiating with the Pac-12, did you not do that in a mental place where you're like, yeah, we should probably have some protections just in case, 2 seasons from now we want to get out of here, or we need to go back or whatever. Like, I don't know. I don't trust the Pac-12 to operate, in a super professional, high level capacity. I would expect, though, that the Mountain West schools joining the Pac-12 would have had the forethought to say, okay, yeah, we should probably have an out like 2 to 4 seasons from now, just in case. And that can't be, a gazillion-dollar out situation. That can't work.
I agree. All right. Let's get your thoughts in here. Shane Dunning, who wants to be known as Shane D. Shane D.
What's up?
Oh, okay.
Please don't suck with this comment, please.
No pun intended. If Memphis is so serious about leaving the AAC, why did they recently sign such a strong grant of rights? They did not. Dr. Ed Scott, who was on the show, point blank said the grant of rights is what it was. We asked him directly if there was a new grant of rights or a commitment. He said no. So I'm gonna side with him. Boys, if Gonzaga is getting a full share, doesn't that just continue to set their basketball and other programs on a higher level than any other school that has football? It does. Gonzaga. And it's something that Gonzaga has had to, I think, bear the burden of for how long? Because in the WCC, Gonzaga was certainly, I like Gonzaga, carrying the water in that town.
Yep.
Gonzaga comes over to the Pac-12 and they're getting a full share, but you need them to do well. Gonzaga. If you're the Pac-12, that should be a rubber stamp. How many teams are we getting into the basketball tournament? Well, yeah, Gonzaga and who else?
Wall, bro.
Gonzaga, oh yeah, for sure. San Diego State, oh yeah, for sure. Like, you need them to be carrying the bar, if you will, in the Pac-12 for basketball. I don't think there's any doubt about that. That's hugely important because the Pac-12, and I know people disagreed with me when I said this yesterday, I would be stunned if on a yearly basis they weren't a minimum of a 4-bid league, because you've got Gonzaga, San Diego State. Those right there are two really good programs. Utah State's you don't know this, but Utah State's a really good basketball school. Boise has been a solid basketball school. I mean, I think the Pac-12 is going to be a 4-bid league on a pretty regular basis.
We'll see.
So, yeah, and you still have to go out and, you still got to go out and dribble the ball, right? Like, you got to go play the game.
Yeah, it's certainly good potential, though.
But what would make us think that any of those schools are going to backslide? Well, let's see what the money is, but my guess is they're not going to backslide very much in any way, shape, or form. So I think if you're getting 4 teams in on a pretty regular basis, you're making money in the Pac-12. It's one of the things, in my opinion, and I think Lori Navarro has talked about this. Yes. It's one of the things that it's 20% of your media rights deal. And then don't forget, all of those tournament shares stay in the conference. They don't stay with the team. So just because Gonzaga is in the tournament doesn't mean Gonzaga gets all that money. They get a lion's share of their money based on what our sources have told us they've negotiated. But the conference is the one reaping the benefit there in the distribution. So it matters that the Pac-12, and really if you're the Mountain West, it matters that the Mountain West find a way to continue being a 3-4 bid league. They really need that. Really, really need that. You look at San Diego State's run a few years ago. That was huge for that conference.
Yes.
So that matters. Mike Smith, Mountain West rules, Pac-12 rules. Well, Mike. Why are you choosing violence today? Let's see. Timothy O'Hara. Is the Pac-12 will not be a basketball conference unless they put UNLV, Nevada, and New Mexico in the Pac-12. Why would they? What does that mean, a basketball conference? What does that mean? The power of the Mountain West Basketball Conference will be in the Pac-12. I have no idea what you're talking about. Maybe you want to restate that. I think the Pac-12 has a chance. Like I just said, if they're 4 bids every year, dude, that's really good for them.
Back 10.
Really, really good for them. And if you're the Mountain West, I think there is this belief that UNLV is still in play. UNLV just signed a new grant of rights.
Yeah, they're not in play, dude.
In the Mountain West. And our sources close to UNLV continue to tell us there's no reason for them to take the financial risk to try and leave that situation. They're guaranteed good money. The conference is moving its headquarters to Vegas. Why would they do that?
They wouldn't.
There would be no reason for that, in my opinion. Let's see. 1/3 of the AAC plays basketball in high school gym, and that's no joke. They're small buildings. Absolutely, they're small buildings. Joseph Harper, how about the AAC and the Pac-12 merge? That would be the biggest coup of the year. Yeah, I don't pretend to know what the Pac-12 is thinking in merger talks. Bro. It's wild to me the Mountain West and the Pac-12 did not merge, and it's because the Pac-12 said no. It's wild to me. But what do I know, right? I'm convinced Memphis wants out of the AAC desperately, but are willing to sit it out, waiting to see how the final big SEC expansion moves work out. I don't think they should be in any rush. We've told you on this show, I think Memphis has really strong leadership in Dr. Ed Scott. I think that community supports Memphis. Memphis should be in no rush here. What they do with football and basketball and their other sports, like this is, I think a lot of people think that Memphis is just a basketball school that plays football. Nothing could be further from the truth. They have a really solid athletic department, and I would be shocked if they acted hastily, because there's just no reason for it.
None.
And smart business people don't act in haste. Dr. Ed Scott and that leadership there is not going to act in haste. They've shown you already that they are business folks. They are not people that are like, oh, that sounds good. Look, a shiny object. It's not how they operate there. What did Ed Scott say? He doesn't operate in a what if scenario.
Yeah.
Right? Like there are no, well, what if? Well, we don't do what ifs. What's it look like? How much is that check going to be every year? What are we making? What are our kids going to go through?
I don't live in a what if scenario.
What is the travel going to be? How arduous? How expensive? What am I going to have to pay in human costs? Like it's a lot more than they're desperate. Let's go. Right? I don't think so. Mike Smith, Texas State would get the PAC a deal worth 5 times than its current deal. I mean,
that must be it, dude.
Oh, I win. Google me.
Oak State James.
Okay,
you're coming off of a day where you said some stuff that got you racked.
Really a clunker yesterday, bro.
Right? Like, and you're going to stay on brand.
Stay hard.
Like, I'm sure that's what you're going to do here.
Guys. The ops building at Texas State is really quite something to behold.
If they put an IPF on top of FedEx Forum in Memphis, the whole Pac-12 could just live on that rooftop.
If it fits a chips, Monty, come on.
You know what I'm saying? Okay. When the Super League happens, 64 to 70 teams, the West Coast teams like USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, Cal will rejoin the Pac-12. The travel is too much money except for football.
I can't, bro. I can't help you, dude.
So let me get this right. You think USC and UCLA and Oregon and Washington are going to take massive financial pay cuts to join the Pac-12? I mean, it's got to be $30 million. From the Big Ten down. It's got to be a $30 million pay cut at a minimum. Yeah, we don't want to be in the Big Ten if it's not for football. James, do you really think Stanford and Cal are going to take $20 million pay cuts at a minimum? At a minimum.
Not a chance.
And have you seen anybody get out of the grant of rights in the ACC? No. Because it doesn't work that you don't just get out of grant of rights. Like the West Coast teams will rejoin the Pac-12 in non-football sports. What is the mechanism?
It's a hell of a drug.
What is the mechanism to make that happen? Did you get into the rectory and drink all the wine today?
Did.
Is that what happened, Pastor James?
Cocaine and hookers, my friend.
James, well, let's not go that far. James is a pastor who is quite literally writing a book about pedophilia in the priesthood.
Hi, this is James. Welcome back.
So my guess is you broke into the rectory and drank all the wine today when you make comments like this. I could be wrong.
Sign stealer guy.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, wine stealer guy.
Weinstein. I'm just saying and saying stuff.
Such as in like.
USVA guy. Okay. Speaking of basketball, it's a travesty that a merger is not happening between the PAC and the Mountain West. Agreed. Just imagine Gonzaga going into the pit every season. Could be amazing. Imagine Gonzaga going to GCU every year.
Gonzaga.
Could be amazing. Let's see. Delaric, who's been a member for 27 months.
Nice.
I would know because I went to Tarleton.
Oh,
Let's go.
Tarleton guy.
A Mustang graduate. I have no idea what Tarleton's mascot is. Please, God, let it be Mustang. You're in Texas. It's a Mustang or a cowboy
Or an oil barrel.
It could be a rig. The Tarleton oil rigs. The Tarleton Golfs of America. I have no idea.
Here you go. The Tarleton State
Cowboys.
University Texan Rider.
What? What is a Texan Rider? Is that real?
Yes, the Texan Rider.
What's wrong with your drops today?
That one's just that one glitches sometimes.
What?
Their official mascot is the Texan Rider.
Okay, you're gonna make me look it up.
Okay.
It is. What the hell is a Texas Rider?
Yeah, otherwise known as your mom.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thanks, Jake.
My bad.
I'm sorry if you're offended by that.
The Texan Rider is the athletic mascot of Tarleton State. Come on.
Come on, dude.
Which is what I say about Texas State.
Come on.
How the flip did you become a Bobcat in the state of Texas?
Like, what?
Oh, shit. Come on, man.
Bro.
A Texan Rider? Okay.
Let's ride.
Luis Enrique tactical positioning strategy.
Yeah.
For $5. If you're not in a P4 now, do you have a shot at a Super League? I believe you would.
It's all about money, though.
You have to understand the main thing, and we can sit here and talk about autonomous. And do you understand that G6 programs, and I say G6 now, the 6 smaller conferences are spending $20 million, $30 million on athletics? Do you understand that the power conferences are spending 125 million on athletics? Their budgets are hundreds of millions, not tens of millions. And you're looking at universities that are just playing in different zip codes, man. This is the separation of classes. Look at American society. You have millionaires and then you have people who can't pay their rent. That's what this is. You have millionaires and then people who can't afford to buy more creatine. That's what this is about. You're talking about tens of millions of dollars where every penny counts, and you're not buying an extra shoelace because the budget doesn't allow for it. Whereas at major universities, Ohio State, Bama, the big boys, they've got all the shoelaces you could ever hope for. It is a complete different. And if you're going to play in a Super League, that $100 million now becomes your football budget. So, and in talking to some of these private equity firms and these private money folks, they're not investing in college football to lose money. And if you're going to make money, you're going to have to spend considerable money to make considerable money. And if your football program is paying players and having an infrastructure cost that is in the upper tens of millions, bro, I mean, what are you going to say to Tarleton State?
The Texan Rider.
Excuse me. What are the Texan Rider? Not Riders. It's Texan Rider. The Texan Rider. Put an S on it, sir. My point is, you're talking about a lot of money and a lot of disparity. And I don't think people understand that. The Pac-12, the money that it would take, Washington State doesn't have the money to be a power conference, an autonomous conference team. Their faculty and staff, their leadership does not want to spend that money.
Nope.
And I know that Washington State fan probably really hates that. And I'm sorry you really hate that.
It's true.
Right? I'm sorry you hate that. But that's the reality of playing football in a top tier program. Greg Hawkins, the Plowboys have 25 rodeo national championship. Respect the name.
Sorry, the Plowboys.
Okay. The Texan Rider of Tarleton State.
I don't even know what you say to that, dude.
Fanboy Prime is 2030 when Texas State leaves the Pac-12 to join the Super League. I believe it is. Boy, you are on the haterade today. Johnny Gonzalez, Texan Rider, is a lethal left-hander out of Wisconsin with a wicked cannon for an arm. And let me tell you something. His 3-6 curveball, that Texan Rider kid, we actually know people who named their kids after the city that they were conceived in. Can you imagine being Dallas? New Orleans. New Orleans Johnson, present. Like,
Bro, why do people do that to their kids, dude?
This is my brother, New Orleans. This is my sister, Tampa. And this is my other brother, Clearwater.
Present.
It just
It's messed up, man.
It is what it is. It is what it is. No, Eric, he's not leaving Pittsburgh. Why would you ask me about TJ Watt in the middle of a Pac-12 conversation?
He's got no class.
Boyd Lake, lots of Raiders and Ranger mascots in Texas.
Texas.
This is my brother Tarleton and my sister Bobcat.
Here I am.
What? Jeremiah Sullivan, whose last name is Champion. Is that the 6th best team in the state or the 8th? Well, I am Tarleton Texan Rider. Tarleton Texan Riders. Is it Riders or Rider?
Google has it as Rider.
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 Google
no
has it
S.
as Rider.
Rider.
The Texan Rider is the athletic mascot of Tarleton State University.